what I hope I'm achieving with this is I like to give oxygen to things that are real inside us, real things that are not negative, but they sound negative. And the social world is just too shallow to have to make room for it. In my mind, it's relevant to this IG account because that is a thing you do in a relationship for somebody. What I was thinking about today is, man, look at this. This is great. You'll have to excuse my jostling. I'm making lunch while talking. And always whine when you cook. And one of the things I've been thinking about is there are times where therapy shows you things that you are supposed to learn independent of your therapist. Because I'm dumping stuff, sorry. And I don't just mean the homework. I mean that there are differences in your life that only you are really going to understand that your therapist is not going to get, because he or she doesn't equipped, doesn't have the biography, doesn't have the combination of emotional and biographical and maybe intellectual maturity language that you do. His own level, fine, but not the same as you. So there are going to be some things about your life and about society that you experience that person's just not going to get. That's not a statement of I can't learn anything. It is a recognition that there are times where there is something that you know is true that this person is having a hard time to detect because they just don't have the language for it. It is a dynamic that happens, and it's good to be aware of it, right? Because then if that other person is open-minded enough, you can kind of guide them through it. Now, that's tedious to do, especially when you're on the clock and you're paying. If there's too much of that, maybe it's time to question if the clinical outcome you're getting is relevant to that, right? And if it's worth trying to push through it. So what happens to me sometimes is, I'll have an observation about society or an observation about other people's observations about society, that I struggle with. For me, or anyone who is a minority of any sort, you have a lifetime, you wrestled with social expectations about things that are unequal, different, your future, access to things, romance, mate selection, friend selection. You've wrestled with these things and had to make sense of them relative to not just white people, but other minorities ever since you were a child. If you're my age, I'm 44. I was born in 79. I was there in high school. You dudes weren't talking about this then. So you don't have a better sense of it than I do. The social awareness, the social and public vocabulary to have these conversations in really meaningful ways is still only just now developing. So what happens is you say these things and it's like, oh wow, that's really philosophical. And that gets me because philosophical is nice, smart person for nice but not real. And they don't mean it to be rude. They don't mean it. They don't know they're saying it that way, but that's what it is. And you got to stop them. It's like, listen, when you hear Spanish, you don't watch Narcos and say, oh man, they must be having this philosophical conversation that I don't get. No, man, he just made a dick pic. He called him an asshole. You just don't speak Spanish. I feel like that's what happens here sometimes. I feel like if you don't have an idea of what you yourself know, that can kind of get lost sometimes. You feel like you want to be a good patient and allow yourself to be backed away from something that is absolutely true. That is something that only you really can identify and introduce into the conversation. Yeah, I don't know, just something honestly I get frustrated with, and if anybody else feels it, I am glad that I can put some oxygen into that. You're not fucking crazy. This one pot shit is almost done. Travesty.